This webinar is being recorded. Okay, so it is 7:01 p.m. It is Wednesday, October 26th, and just like to welcome everyone to tonight's Councillor Chat. I'm Councillor Glen, and with me tonight is Jordan Moffat, who works in my office. Hey, Jordan.
Nice to see you, Glenn. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. It's been a busy few weeks at council, so this is kind of a nice change of pace to be able to do our councillor chat again. It's been a few weeks, so good to be here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thank you. It's a nice, cool, rainy day, huh?
Yeah. It's kind of that the rain kind of brings everything down a little bit, but maybe Stittsville residents are warming up. Maybe the heat's on and they're all gathered around their computer or mobile device, ready to ask.
I think questions. So. This is a great activity for a rainy day.
It is. So if you've never joined one of these councillor chats before, here's how it works. Jordan is going to be moderating the chat, looking for your questions. And there are a number of ways that you can send in a question. If you are on Zoom, you can use the Q&A panel. It's at the bottom of your screen, right down there. You can also raise your hand on Zoom. And if we see you raise your hand, you can ask your question, I guess, in person, kind of like a call-in radio show. If you are watching this on Facebook, put a comment underneath the video, and Jordan will be watching for the comments coming in. So if you have a question tonight, you can use the comment on Facebook. If you're seeing this on YouTube, it's actually not live, it's a recording. However, if you do have a question, you're welcome to type in a question on YouTube, but it might be a little bit before we get back to you because that's an archived recording. And of course, you can contact me anytime at glen.gower@ottawa.ca. I know, Jordan, while we're waiting for some of the questions to come in on Zoom and Facebook, you've put together a few frequently asked questions, things that have come up recently in our inbox, just to start things off and get things going. So if you've got any you want to start with, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I was curious because you mentioned you've had a busy few weeks at City Hall. So why don't you just tell the folks what exactly you've been doing at City Hall with all the meetings that you've had the last, probably most of October, really.
Yeah, well, we've had all of our regular committee meetings and council meetings and all the usual City Hall work that we do. But I think the three main things over the last few weeks, one has been the official plan. So I brought this with me. This is the bound copy of the draft official plan, and I've got it marked up and tabbed and bookmarked. Over the course of 3 days, we had some very long committee meetings. I think we spent 25 hours in total over the 3 days. We had over 90 delegations, public delegations, residents come out and speak and share their comments and suggestions. So that took up the first 2 days. And then on the third day, we spent an entire day introducing motions and debating motions and discussing the official plan. I believe we considered about 60 motions, and all but 2 or 3 of them passed. And basically, it was small tweaks to the plan based on what we heard from delegations, either who presented at the committee over the first 2 days, or people who might have sent an email with some concerns about different aspects of the plan. And it was changes all over the place, changes to some specifics around intensification in certain neighborhoods, changes around how we're measuring our policy around tree coverage. There were some technical amendments to fix typos and so on. I introduced a motion, something you helped me on, to clarify some of the language around affordable housing. That's probably worth explaining. So the province has something called the provincial policy statement, and it's this guiding policy that directs everything that cities in Ontario do, and it covers all sorts of aspects of planning, and one of them is housing affordability and affordable housing. And it has a couple ways that it tells cities they can define affordable housing. One of them is based on income. So making sure that people aren't spending more than 30% on their income, but it distinguishes between ownership and rentals. And I felt that the official plan in its draft form was not clear enough in terms of highlighting that when we're looking at affordability of rental housing, we have to be looking at the average income of renters, not the city at large. And it makes a big difference. I think it goes from, what is it, around 40 some $1,000s for renters as an average income compared to 80 some $1,000s for overall households in the city. So it's a really big difference when we're calculating what affordability means. And I was glad to be able to introduce that and get the support from the committee on that. So those were three long committee days recently. We had a committee meeting last week, kind of a special meeting to talk about the new central library at LeBreton Flat. It's known as Adasoke. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right.
Adasoke.
Adasoke. Okay, thank you. Adasoke, which is an Indigenous name. It's a partnership with the Library and Archives of Canada. And they took the project out to tender, and all of the bids for the construction came back higher than anticipated. And so we had a meeting to discuss how those increases in costs would be funded. A lot of that is being picked up by the federal government because they have the national component of that. But from a city level, we're looking at different library reserves and other sources. So it's not going to directly affect your tax bill or anything, but we had to make decisions about where we pull the money from to make up for that difference in price. It's going to be a very exciting project. I believe it's 2025 is when it's set to open. And if people have seen some of the new civic libraries in Halifax or Calgary, these are really inspiring buildings that, beyond being a library, they're also major tourist draws. I think like in Halifax, for example, that their civic libraries become one of the top attractions for visitors to the city. This library, the design is beautiful, but it goes well beyond just borrowing books in terms of the programming. I think one of the historical things that the federal government hopes to do is bring some of the original constitutional documents out for public display instead of sitting in a warehouse as they are now. So that's kind of interesting. And then the third thing that's been occupying a lot of time is OC Transpo and LRT. And I'm sure anyone's familiar with the problems right now with LRT, but we've had a number of very long and detailed meetings to try to understand what's happening and make some decisions on how we get that fixed going forward.
And do you have any sense of the timelines or what people can expect when and what exactly is going on?
Yeah, actually, we just got an update. Let's see here, 4:34 p.m. So last week we got an update from RTG with a target for when they want to have some trains back in service. They said November 1st. City said that's really not realistic in terms of the testing and some of the other preparation work that needs to happen. So we're expecting to have, I believe it's 7 trains back by November 15th, in the first couple of weeks of November. But what we received today was a indication from RTG that they believe they can have the full fleet back up and running by the end of November. Again, our staff is a lot more cautious and said, look, by the time you get everything testing and up and running, we think it's more realistic to look at mid-December to have the full service back. So what that means is it looks like by the middle of November, we'll likely have trains running every 7 or 8 minutes. That's the 7 train cars. It means 7 or 8 minutes. And once you get to that full trains, which is 14 or 15 trains, depending on the rush hour and so on, you're looking at service every 3 to 5 minutes or so. The 7 or 8 trains that could be running in November would certainly be enough to handle the current volumes during rush hour for the trains. And in the meantime, we have the R1 bus service taking people through downtown where the train runs.
And there are also a variety of different studies, or people are taking a look at what has happened in the past and how to rectify those things going forward.
Yeah, yes. We have hired actually a group called TRA. They're a consultant out of Philadelphia, and they have various experience working on train systems across North America. We have hired them to do a full review and safety audit prior to the relaunch of the train. So this is stemming from the 2 derailments that happened in August and September. And so this group, actually, we got an update last Wednesday. The scope of what they're doing went beyond what I assumed they would be working on, but they're doing kind of a top to bottom audit on how the maintenance happens, how the testing happens. We're going to be getting another briefing from them in the next week or two, it looks like, just to bring us up to speed on what they have found and what their recommendations are in terms of going back to service. So that's one thing that's there, the TRA. We also commissioned something that's called the Mott-McDonald report. There has been a lot of discussion about this, but my colleague, Councillor Glen, brought it up at our last council, and he directed staff that when that report has been published, it's going to be made public. This is a report that we commissioned as part of some of the legal action that we're taking against RTG through the project agreement. And so we commissioned another group of consultants, again, to come in and be doing a top to bottom look at how RTG is maintaining the train and their operations and so on. Originally, this document was going to be, kept private, but a number of councillors, including me, are putting a lot of pressure on staff to release as much information publicly as possible. We still have restrictions based on the contract, but bit by bit, we're going to kind of try to dismantle that and release as much as we can to the public. So there we've got the TRA, we've got the Mott-McDonald. We've already had a series of reports done in terms of procurement and so on. But the other major one that's really in the starting stages is a proposal that I put forward in front of council 2 weeks ago to have the Auditor General do an investigation of a lot of the decision making and the technical processes since the train was approved by council in 2012, I believe was so this is going back quite a long time. So the Auditor General is going to be looking at all of the different decision points of council, looking at how the train was constructed, how the launch happened back in 2019, a really full report. I actually met with the Auditor General last week, and she was asking me what's important to you and to people in your community to understand where should I be focusing the investigation. And I've been really impressed so far with the breadth of what she's looking to cover. One thing I think it's important to mention is she can't directly investigate elected officials like councillors or the mayor, but she can interview elected officials under oath, as well as staff, as well as contractors. She can require us to hand over documents, including emails and memos and notes and so on. If she finds anything that she thinks warrants investigation, she can refer that to the Integrity Commissioner or another level of court or justice, to police or to another level of investigation. The other thing is she can also investigate, well, she can't investigate the elected officials themselves, she can investigate their staff, which is significant. So staff in my office, Jordan, you and several other colleagues, or she can investigate staff from the mayor's office as well. So she actually has quite a broad reach in terms of her investigative authority. So, there's a number of different ways that we're investigating and assessing LRT, and the goal is, yes, get it back to service safely and ensure we have reliable transit, but also looking longer term, learning from, could decisions have been made differently, and how do we ensure that we have a good transit system in the years and decades to come. And we're going to be starting, I think next month we'll get that Mott-McDonald report back. That'll be important. And then the Auditor General is going to be giving us back some phased reports over the next few months and probably a couple of years eventually.
And basic question, but Mott-McDonald, that's the name of a company, not a person.
Yeah, it's Mott-McDonald, MOTTMAC Donald. Yeah.
Okay, so you had probably the biggest policy document of at least the last 25 years.
Yes.
The city's biggest infrastructure project, the
library.
and then the library would be the biggest civic building of probably the last 25 years or so.
Yes, and we had actually, the library is like a very large, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. But we also had the Civic Hospital Master Plan. That was another one that was another full day, I think 2 days of meetings on that. And this is about a $3 billion hospital that the Civic Hospital is going to be moving to a site near Dow's Lake. So another big file. We were looking at the master plan for that one. So yeah, it's been a busy few weeks at City Hall.
So let's go. We just did some big stuff. Let's maybe go back to local stuff, smaller scale, but still important. We got a new on the website, a new development application in Stittsville on Wild Pine Court. That's right in between two cul-de-sacs. Wild Pine has a cul-de-sac, and then Ravenscroft has a cul-de-sac, and in between that is this parcel of land that's now in a development application process. So why don't you tell us about that, Glenn?
Yeah, I was just calling up my my website here because I think it's probably easiest just to share my screen. So I'm going to glengower.ca/development. So this is our map showing some active and expired development approval files in Stittsville. But if I scroll down, we've got the development application for 37 Wild Pine. Some residents might know this one. There's a cul-de-sac at the end of Wild Pine. That cul-de-sac is actually on privately owned property, but the city had an agreement with the landowner to use that as a turnaround for garbage trucks and snowplows and so on. Wild Pine is kind of on the south part of this, and then Ravenscroft comes off of Stittsville Main Street. And when these streets and original subdivisions were laid out many years ago, there was always an intention to connect Ravenscroft to Wild Pine. It just makes it more efficient for school buses and garbage trucks and snowplows. And that would happen when this final piece of the land was set for development. So there is a development application. They want to build 27 townhomes and 2 semi-detached. It just came in last week, so it's still very much in the review stage. And I know the planning staff are going to be hosting a public meeting later on this fall. I think, is it last week in November or first week of December? I forget when we confirmed that.
Definitely around that time.
Yeah. It's a sensitive area. Obviously, there's some existing trees on the site, but it's also quite close to Pool Creek. So there's some floodplain setbacks that they need to respect. And of course, it's construction happening very close to existing homes. So these kinds of applications get a lot of scrutiny in terms of what's being proposed and mitigating any impacts to the neighbors near the site.
And what is exactly being proposed there?
Well, it's townhomes and semis. So beyond the homes, it's also the connection of the street that needs to be reviewed and assessed. So it's a zoning bylaw amendment. It's a plan of subdivision, a plan of condominium. What I would suggest is if people are looking for more information or have questions or comments, head onto my website and you'll see the email here for the planner, Kathy Rigas. So if you do have comments, you can send them in, and all of those comments or questions are considered and reviewed by the planner, and will basically be used to as they assess, as they review and evaluate the proposal in front of us here.
Okay, let's talk about one of your big priorities since you've been councillor has been Robert Grant Avenue. So we all know Robert Grant Avenue, where it currently is between Abbott and Fernbank, but we've seen some action in the last few weeks, last month, of a new roundabout kind of near Palladium Drive.
Yeah,
what is that roundabout? And what's the update on how to connect that roundabout to where Robert Grant is actually now?
Okay, so I'm going to bring up again another map here on my screen.
We kind of do this every council chat. We have a little Robert Grant check-in. We should have a graphic for
that. And a theme song for Robert Grant. Okay, yeah. So can you see that map on the screen?
Yep.
I think what's important now, so Fernbank Road is where Robert Grant currently begins. And phase 1 is built to Abbott Street. So I'm sure many people watching today have driven a car or walked or taken their bike down Robert Grant Avenue between Fernbank and Abbott. You mentioned the roundabout that just opened. I'm going to go all the way up top here. That roundabout is shown on the map right here at Palladium Drive intersecting with Robert Grant Avenue. So that roundabout is the northern end of Robert Grant. It was constructed so that this brown area of land here would have road access. It's a new Mattamy subdivision, and without this roundabout and road access, there'd be no way for those homeowners to get to their home, basically. So they built this north part of Robert Grant. And over the next few years, we are going to see each of the other phases constructed and built in. It's taking far too long and much longer than originally scheduled and anticipated. The next phase that we're going to see built is between Abbott Street and Hazeldean Road. And we actually have a meeting next week to just get an update on the schedule for construction and so on. Officially in city plans, it's referred to as construction in 2015, but possible that front ending will speed up development sooner than that. And what that means is front ending is the developer, the owner of this land here that's Kazell Flog, I'll explain what that means in a sec, would be building the road in advance of the city's schedule to build it. So Kazell will be advancing the money and the construction, they'll get it built, and then the city will pay them back in 2025. Otherwise, we'd have to wait until the city builds it 4 years from now, which is too long to wait.
So sooner than 2025.
Sooner than 2025. I'm hoping we can get construction started as early as next year. I mean, it's a critical road for a number of reasons. Anyone who has been in that area when Paul Desmarais High School is letting out at the end of the day around 3:30 p.m. to 4 o'clock knows the congestion there. Anyone who's used Iber Road or Terry Fox or Stittsville, Maine, we need this north-south connection in our community as soon as possible. And it's the number one city priority that I have right now. That Kazell Flog, Kazell is the name of the landowner for that land. It's, I guess, the old Kazell family, but FLOG stands for Fernbank Landowners Group. That's the acronym that they use, FLOG. Maybe I'll just scroll up on the map so people can see. Robert Grant goes north here.
And you can see the LRT line there on that map too.
Yeah. So the LRT would end at Hazeldean Road. There'd be a station, and then there'd be some bus lanes along Robert Grant for bus rapid transit. That's the BRT that you see there. I should put this map on my website. I'd forgotten. I found it today when I was looking.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that map. That's a good map.
Yeah. It does a really good job at showing a number of things. We also have Stittsville Main Street extension. So coming off another future roundabout, Stittsville Main Street will eventually connect from where it ends now in Jackson Trails. It'll connect up to Robert Grant and the Palladium on the highway. And then you can see if I go down here, this is, I believe this is Rouncy right now. I assume Rouncy will continue. I don't think it'll change names, but it'll meet up with Robert Grant about midway. So you can just see how once we start to get this more of a grid of roads, when you have issues like congestion on Terry Fox or on Iber, you've got other choices. And importantly here, in the stretch between Abbott and Hazeldean, we will have bike paths and sidewalks, which really do not exist in a meaningful way in this part of the community. There's no sidewalks on Iber. There's no sidewalks on Fernbank or Sweetenham. So incredibly important to get Robert Grant built for vehicle traffic, for transit, and for active transportation.
Just on that subject of the Stittsville Main Street extension that you have on this map here, we just posted, I guess it was about a month ago now, that they have an updated project website on the City of Ottawa for that project, the environmental assessment for the Stittsville Main extension, and for the Huntmar widening. That's
right. So planning out how Huntmar Drive will be configured north of Maple Grove Road, and planning out how Stittsville Main will be configured north of Jackson Trails. How many lanes will it have parking? How wide are the bike lanes? Are there trees alongside it? Those kinds of things. So more planning for those projects coming soon.
So an environmental assessment doesn't just mean they're looking at the environmental aspect of it. It's basically like the introduction of the study, the feasibility of it, right?
Yeah, environmental is like a really broad definition of that. Like what more it's like what's around it, what is the surrounding conditions of the area around it, and whether that's traffic patterns or whether that's existing buildings or we were looking at part of that environmental assessment is there's a private school in Huntmar. So how do we plan the road and the speed limits with that with having the school in that environment? How do we properly plan for that?
Well, let's stick in Fernbank for the next question. I want to ask you about the Fernbank sewer, the trunk sewer that's going in right now.
Oh, I should share this screen again because it might make it easier to explain. Folks may see a little bit of construction happening on Shea Road, just south of the rec center. Can you see my cursor, Jordan, if I'm moving this around?
Move it around.
I'm over near Shea Road. I probably can't see it. Maybe I could do this.
Oh, I can see it. I can see it now. Yep. Yeah, I can see it.
Maybe I could edit the PDF. I could actually draw on it as we go here.
Let's make sure you save a copy.
That's a good idea. This might take a while. It's converting scanned page to editable. Okay, while it's doing that, one of the big city infrastructure projects right now is the Fernbank trunk sewer. So this is a new sewer line to serve a lot of the new homes in the Fernbank area and the Edenwild area and the Traditions area, and also existing homes. It's an upgrade for homes like along Liard Street and Caribou and John Sidney and that part of the community. And I guess Hartsmere and Joe Lewis as well. In order to do that, they need to do some digging and sewer connections underneath Shea Road and underneath Fernbank Road. So it's still loading here, right? Okay. I'd love to show this on the map because it's easier to explain. It follows the future Cope Road corridor. So right now, Cope Road goes basically from Eagleson Road. It heads westward across Terry Fox, where the new LCBO is and where the Walmart is. And it continues to Robert Grant, and then it crosses Robert Grant. And, whoops. I'm trying to figure out how I can draw this for you, Jordan, because it'll make a lot more sense, but I'm not seeing a drawing tool. I can sign the document, I can highlight my text, but I'm not seeing an actual marker or anything. So anyways, I'll just try to explain. Cope Drive is this dashed line that continues west of Robert Grant and across Shea Road, and then it does a curve here, and it ends at Fernbank. And so in order to build this tunnel, they have to build a deep hole around Fernbank, right around Edenwild, and on Shea Road, just south of the rec center fields. And so they're building some temporary bypass roads to allow vehicles to go around the pit. Originally, they came to me and said, can we get your okay as a councillor to completely close Shea Road and Fernbank Road for a few weeks while we do this work? But that would just be far too much of a disruption in this community. So instead, they're building some temporary bypass roads so we don't have to do a complete road closure. But that construction work on the bypass roads is starting this week. And then I believe the actual detours will be starting in mid-November, and depending on where they are and how the weather goes, they'll be lasting for a few weeks there.
So the alternative would have been a complete closure of those intersections and a detour through the Hartsmere area, I guess.
Yeah, it would have been a mess. I mean, if they had closed Shea, if you were heading from the Hartsmere area or the Edenwild area, you'd have to go all the way around Stittsville, Maine, and Abbott to get to the rec center or to Sacred Heart. Or if you were hoping to get if we had closed Shea to get to, or Fernbank to get to the Walmart or the shops over in Canada, you'd have to use Fluellen. So it really did not make any sense. So I'm glad that the project manager has found a way to do this bypass road and avoid the complete closure of the streets for sure.
That is good. I'm checking right now for, while you take a drink of water, I'm checking the questions and I don't see any. So if you are watching this on Facebook, keep in mind that Councillor Gower will answer any question you have on Stittsville. In the meantime, you can answer my questions on Stittsville, Glenn.
Okay.
Let's talk speed cameras, automated speed enforcement.
Okay. Yeah. So
Photo radar.
that was
It has many
another
names.
Another council decision. I guess we approved it 2 weeks ago at our last city council. An expansion of the city's speed radar program in school zones. We were doing 7 or 8 pilot sites, one of them in Canada in front of Holy Trinity on Kitimavik. And they've been really successful at bringing speeds down in school zones. So what they did is they went around, they actually did a speed study in every single school zone in Ottawa, and then they ranked which zones had the lowest compliance. And 2 of the 15 worst compliance levels were in Stittsville, one in front of Sacred Heart on Abbott Street, and the other in front of St. Stephen in Jackson Trails on Stittsville, Maine. So this year we're adding 15 new speed camera locations in Ottawa, 2 of them in Stittsville in front of those 2 schools I mentioned. And then in the coming years, we'll be expanding to more and more school sites as we go, which is good. You know, when we're seeing a very low compliance, these speed cameras are really successful at bringing down speeds in front of schools and making them safer. And they also operate at all times of the day. So I know we've got a problem with speeding on Abbott Street, so it's another tool we can use. The money from the fines goes back to road safety initiatives. So they go to programs like neighborhood traffic calming, which is more permanent, substantial measures like speed bumps and so on, or intersection redesigns to make things safer. They can go back into some of the education and awareness programs that the city does for safety. They can go back into infrastructure improvements for pedestrians and cyclists. So it's a positive in the sense that we can be generating more money that goes directly back to safety. I think ultimately our goal should be that we're focusing money to improve the environment near where these speed cameras are placed. So for example, if a lot of people are speeding on Abbott Street or a lot of people are speeding in Jackson Trails, if we're collecting money from these cameras, well, let's reinvest it back in safety measures, right? Like narrowing the intersections there, or other measures to slow down traffic. There's a lot of different techniques, and some of them are quite expensive, and so they require a bit more investment. But eventually, it'd be great if we could just slow cars down by design rather than relying on photo radar all the time.
So Brandon from Facebook just asked the follow-up question I was going to ask is, if someone has speeding on their street, and we know a lot of residents have issues with speeding on their street, and they put the signs up on their lawns that say slow down, can they request a photo radar on any street, or is it only designated around school zones?
So not yet. Currently, the province only gives us permission to do them in what's called community safety zones. And basically, that means school zones and a limited number of other areas where they're allowed to be, close to sensitive areas like parks, for example. So it's a very limited number of locations where the city can do these radar locations. There's other cities like Edmonton where they have mobile radar and they move them around to different spots in the city. I think that'd be a great idea, but so far we don't appear to be allowed to do that under provincial law. So, we have a problem area along Robert Grant, for example, or along Carp Road, or even Westridge, but they don't qualify as community safety zones under the provincial rules. And so we can't put photo radar in those zones yet, but it's something that our city is lobbying the province to get a expanded permission to do that. I think historically, the provinces has been of the opinion that people don't like photo radar and they don't want to see that. And I know there are people who would agree with that, but I'm hearing more and more like people are so concerned about speed. It is kind of I was going to say pandemic. I'm not sure that's a great word to use these days, but there's a lot of speeding in our community, and we can put up our our flex stakes, and in some cases we do speed bumps or intersection design, but we've got a real problem where our neighbors are driving too quickly in our neighborhoods. So if photo radar is another tool that can help solve that, I think it's something we should be looking at.
So this is also Brandon's follow-up, and he wants to know specifically about adding stop signs, but I'll add on to that. If we can't use, we know that photo radar works, we can't put it on every street. What tools do you have in your ward office, but also what are the citywide design tools that can slow drivers down? Brandon's asking about stop signs specifically, but what are the other tools too?
Well, I have a budget. There's a few things. I have a budget of $50,000 a year that goes towards temporary traffic calming. Temporary traffic calming, for the most part, what you see around Stittsville is the flex stakes in the middle of the road, which brings speeds down by about 10 kilometers an hour. Which is significant, because we can get a speed down on Westridge, for example, from 50 to 40. It significantly improves the reaction time. If you're driving down a street like Westridge or Liard or Jonathan Pack at 50, you simply do not have time to react should a child or a pet run into the street. If you're down closer to 40 or below, you do have a much more realistic chance of avoiding a bad accident. So flex stakes, some of the radar signs that are not handing out tickets but are just indicating your speed, those can be useful, particularly if you're coming off of a street like Hazeldean that has a higher speed and turning onto a slower one. It's a great reminder. But the $50,000 doesn't really go that far. I've mentioned speed bumps. We're looking at a few locations for next year, but the cost of a speed bump is around $8,000 to $10,000 a piece. So it really does not go very far. There's another level of traffic calming called neighborhood traffic calming. The city does a few of these projects each year, but they're more substantial. So we have one actually coming in the Fringewood neighborhood next year, doing an upgrade of lighting, of intersection design, some raised intersections, a number of initiatives. The budget for that's around $200,000 or so. So it's a really substantial upgrade to the infrastructure there. Yes, stop signs, although stop signs under the Highway Traffic Act, they need to be warranted, which means we can't just put them anywhere, because stop signs actually don't do a very good job at slowing people down. They're really meant to be controlled, to have people stop, to allow vehicles to enter an intersection. Generally speaking, they're not a great, if we want to slow people down, we want to use the flex stakes or the radar cameras or the other interventions like narrowing the intersection. Stop signs are not, I guess the problem with stop signs is they have really low compliance right now. Is the more stop signs we put out in the community, the fewer people are actually stopping and the more people are blowing through them. I mentioned there was a study.
With stop signs, you go and then you stop. With traffic calming, you create a more consistent, slower speed, whereas stop signs, you can be fast, stop, fast, stop, fast, stop.
Yeah, so a good example that's on Fernbank. There are 3 stop signs in a row between Liard and Stittsville, Maine. So 3 stop signs and a stop light. What we see is we often see people just, I think I'd struggle to call it a rolling stop, people blowing through the stop signs there and speeding up significantly between them. So with every stop sign you add, it actually overall makes the whole network less effective. But anyways, it's I'm maybe getting into more detail than is worthwhile. If people have speeding concerns, 2 things. First of all, email my office, because we can ask city staff to do a speed evaluation, and they'll come out and they'll look at what speed are people going and what percentage are following the speed limit. And if we see where there's a real gap between the speed limit and how fast people are going, we can look at what's an appropriate traffic calming measures. So that's one thing you can do. Second thing you can do is you can report to Ottawa Police, ottawapolice.ca/report. And they have a special enforcement team, and they're looking at data from resident reports to focus their extra enforcement. So if all of a sudden they see a lot of complaints coming in a particular street or neighborhood, they're going to send out some extra enforcement there. There's actually a third thing people can do is slow down yourself. Watch your speed limit. I know it's easy to say everyone speeds, and except for me, or it seems, but yeah, I think everyone in our community is probably guilty of exceeding a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit on neighborhood streets. So set a good example yourself. Slow down to 40 kilometers an hour and make a full stop at stop signs. I think we need to kind of encourage a bit of a cultural or behavioral shift in how we drive. And I think there's still too many people who drive distracted, who don't follow the basic rules of the road. You know, I heard the other day, somebody emailed me about, they saw a pickup truck run a stop sign where there was a crossing guard present. And I really struggle, you know, we can put all the stop signs, all the photo radar, all these measures, but if people are just not following the most basic rules of the road, you know, when you've got someone waving a stop sign in your face and you're still blowing through, I think that speaks to maybe a bigger behavioral or cultural problem with how people, how responsible people are with their vehicles on the road.
It's a small anecdote, but yesterday I was in a different neighborhood and I was doing 40 kilometers an hour on a 40-kilometer street, and I was honked at for going too slow.
It's happened to me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have people tailgating right behind you on Westridge going 40 kilometers an hour or something. That's the speed limit. And you got to make sure you can stop your vehicle and you're alert to what's happening around you.
Now we have a comment from Tom on Facebook. He's disputing the effectiveness of flex stakes. So maybe we can point to the data or post that on our website to show the results of the studies that the city has done regarding flex stakes.
Yeah, I actually saw the most recent one I saw was last week. It was about Rose Hill, and a long time ago, the city put up a speed camera on Rose Hill, like one of the photo, not a camera, one of the photo boards. And they went back into the speed study last week and found that the flex stakes were successfully bringing down speeds to 40 kilometers an hour. So we're actually going to move that speed board because it's not really needed anymore. Those flex stakes are doing the job. So we'll move that speed board somewhere else. But what we're seeing consistently, you know, road like Rose Hill, Jonathan Pack is one I remember seeing a recent study on, whereas before we would have had the typical speed being 50 kilometers an hour. Now we're seeing that speed at 40 kilometers an hour. So they do a really good job at narrowing the roadway. Another one is in front of Stittsville Public School on Granite Ridge. Really successful at bringing the speed of traffic down there as well. So they're a very low cost measure with a really high result, high effectiveness in bringing speeds down.
And it seems to me that the city is learning more and more each year about how to deploy the flex stakes, because I've noticed sometimes they place them on the side and then one in the middle, or sometimes all three. The approach changes each year based on the data they gather, right?
Yeah, and looking at new neighborhoods, something you and I work on a lot, Jordan, is the review of the design of new neighborhoods. And we're looking for things like the width of the street and the width of the intersections, because what we know, what those flex stakes do is they narrow the width of the lanes. And when the width of the lane is smaller, psychologically as a driver, you slow down as you go down that street. Ideally, I'd like to do that without the flex stakes, and that's by designing streets to be to have choke points or narrowing points by design. And ultimately, that's the most effective way to have permanent measures to keep traffic going more around 30 kilometers an hour on our residential streets than around 40 or 50 kilometers an hour. I wonder if I can can I find my favorite graphic here? If I can find it.
Yes, of course.
Super quickly. Oh, I've got way too much on my desktop, Jordan. 30 kilometer an hour infographic. Okay, share screen. Just to illustrate what I'm talking about, how this makes a difference, even if we're bringing speeds down to 30 kilometers an hour from 40 or 50. This is data. This data has been repeated in a number of studies, and it's pretty consistent. So it's showing if you're traveling at 50 kilometers an hour, there's a 50% chance that a pedestrian will survive a collision. If you reduce that speed to 30%, there's a 90%. Sorry, if you reduce that speed to 30 kilometers, there's a 90% chance that that person will survive. So I think those are pretty clear why we're paying so much attention to bringing speeds down to 30 kilometers an hour, 40 kilometers an hour from the 50 or above that a lot of streets have been designed for in our community.
And I just had the stats here from the automated speed board a post that we put on the website a few weeks ago. There's been a 200% increase in speed compliance and a 72% decrease in high-end speeders since the ASC program.
That's good.
Those are good numbers.
The other issue we have in Stittsville right now is street racing and some of the really loud engines, loud mufflers. Police are tackling that through a program called Operation Overwatch, and they've handed out hundreds of tickets over the past 18 months. Back in September, the provincial government also increased the amount of fines and the amount of time that your license can be suspended if you're caught racing. And this is going like much higher over the speed limit. Back in September, police pulled over someone doing 127 kilometers an hour in front of the Food Basics on Huntmar, which is just insanely dangerous. So hopefully those higher fines send a clearer message. It's a problem not just in Ottawa, but I think all over North America, unfortunately. I wanted to mention, I don't think I've shared this because it's really just come in the last 24 hours or so. We do have 2 new crossing guard locations starting in January. There's another crossing guard being added near St. Stephen's School in Jackson Trails, and also another crossing guard in front of West Wind School. And we do get questions from time to time from residents about asking about adding a crossing guard to their school. You can email my office or you can call 311. And a couple times each year, city staff will go out and they'll do a count of traffic and of pedestrians crossing to see if it meets the qualifications for a paid position of a school crossing guard. So I'm glad to see we're adding a couple more there. There's another location that always comes up, which is in front of Holy Spirit School at Stittsville, Maine and Beverly. Unfortunately, because it's a signalized crossing, like a full traffic light with the crosswalk, it needs to have a higher number of people crossing and vehicles in order to qualify. But we are looking at some other options there, like extending the crossing time for students who are walking across, having a longer time between when the light turns red and when it cycles to a walks. Because a problem we're seeing is sometimes vehicles running that yellow light or just taking advantage and running through a red and some close calls sometimes. But again, really would encourage, if you're a parent at Holy Spirit and you see an incident where someone is blocking a crosswalk or where they're running a red light, I know it happens, make a report to Ottawa Police, because if I have that data, it helps me advocate. Right now, that crossing point does not meet the warrants, the official minimums in order to fund a crossing guard. If I had some more data in terms of police reports for issues that are happening, it would certainly help me advocate at City Hall to try to overrule some of those warrants. So if you're a parent and you have concerns and you've seen incidents with traffic and drivers not following the rules, please report that, ottawapolice.ca/report.
And one final follow-up question on the speeding and traffic issues. Tom wants to know how he can get a speed board in his neighborhood. I'm assuming the answer is send you an email.
Send me an
we'll put 'em on
email.
the list.
Yeah, send me an email. We will ask staff to do a speed study. We were actually looking again. My team and I, we meet every couple of weeks just to review locations. We're going to be deploying some new locations for speed measures in the new year. And so we have, as I mentioned, a budget of $50,000 for new measures and for upgrades or maintenance on existing measures. It really does not go as far as I'd like. But we're just trying to figure out where are the biggest problem spots and how do we best deploy the measures. This year, we added a major new deployment of flex stakes along Iber Road. I know we're going to be focusing on some of the new communities in Blackstone and Fernbank now that the roads are under city ownership, and we've got a few other problem spots that we're looking to address next spring. So this would be a great time if you've got a specific concern about your street to email my office and we can look into that.
All right, well, we just have about 10 minutes left of our scheduled time.
Oh.
And so I thought, well, we're here like once a month or so, Glenn. So we're probably gonna have one more of these before, at least one more before the year's out.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to know what you have, what are your goals, what you expect is going to happen over the next month or so, both at City Hall and in the local board office.
Oh, well, at City Hall, we're going through our budget process. We're in budget season. We had a meeting last night for residents, a Q&A about the budget. The budget process starts the first week of November when the draft budget is tabled. And then over the month of November, we gather feedback from the public and we hold a number of meetings to debate how the city will be spending and investing money. So that'll be a big focus at City Hall. The other one will be on LRT, about the return to service for LRT and the safety and the ongoing issues. That'll be of prime concern over the next 6 weeks and beyond. On a local level, we mentioned Robert Grant Avenue earlier, so I know we've got some work to do there in terms of the planning and trying to get that underway. We are already looking towards winter, I hate to say it, but around snow clearing and some working with city staff just to make sure we have some priority locations identified, and looking at, for example, school zones, how we can make sure that sidewalks and pathways near school zones are prioritized and the snowplow beats. We are in our Stittsville Main Street public realm plan. So the city is doing a new plan to guide upgrades to Stittsville Main Street, the configuration of lanes between vehicles and sidewalks and bike lanes, also the street furniture like garbage cans and street lamps and so on. So we're going to have some meetings coming up in the coming weeks that the public can attend and provide your feedback. So those are some of the big focus areas right now in the community.
And what is the cost of one flex stake?
I believe it's $250.
Okay, Brandon, I hope you heard that.
$250 for flex stake. The radar boards cost about $2,200.
$2,200 of $50,000 a year. Okay.
Yeah, and a speed bump, because everybody always asks, is about $8,000 to $10,000. Asphalt and the installation for that is super expensive.
Right. Well, those are the questions I had. I have one other question. It's not relevant. What are you going as for Halloween, Glenn?
I don't know yet. I've had some ideas, and I'm hoping to have a bit of free time tomorrow afternoon so I can give it some thought and prepare, because we have on Halloween Sunday, this Sunday, 4:30 to 6 p.m. I'll be out there with my team at Village Square Park, and we're going to be handing out some Halloween treats, 4:30 to 6 o'clock, Village Square Park. And we're also doing a contest. I'm glad you mentioned this because I nearly forgot. We're also doing a contest, a Stittsville Halloween costume contest. And so if you have a creative costume idea, you can take a photo and you can either email it to me or tag me at Councillor Glen on Instagram. And we've got some gift certificates, gift cards from some local businesses to give away. I believe there's information up on the website at glengower.ca about the costume contest and the October 31st giveaway.
Excellent. You'll probably have some trick-or-treaters around the house too, eh?
No doubt. And it's been fun. I mean, I'm always moving around the neighborhood, not biking as much these days because it's cold, but certainly walking around. And there's some pretty elaborate Halloween displays out there in the community. Skeletons and haunted houses and light shows and pumpkins and everything. So it's a fun time of year. I think it's great. Halloween is a real civic-minded holiday, right? I mean, I wish every night of the year
you get to meet your neighbors. You get to walk the streets.
I wish every night of the year everybody would go out and walk around their neighborhood and say hi to their neighbors, and just, I think it's one of the ways we can promote safety and getting to know your community, and people spend the extra time decorating their house and everything. It's a really, really positive community building holiday. So
that's true.
So I'm glad we can sort of get out there and trick or treat. Remember last year it was very different with COVID. I mean, still need to keep precautions and I think Ottawa Public Health has some great guidelines up on their website if people are looking for some safety tips. But I'm glad we're back to a more normal Halloween this year for sure.
Tanya wants to shamelessly plug the pumpkin parade on November 1st.
Absolutely. One of my favorite events, November 1st in the evening. You can bring your pumpkin. It's basically if you have a creative pumpkin,
the leftover pumpkins from.
Yeah. And so you can go and you can walk around like it's a lineup of great creative pumpkins, and you can vote on your favorites, and the fan favorites, the crowd favorites can win a prize. And it's organized by the Stittsville Village Association. I'm guessing that's Tanya Hine, the
That's right.
past president of the association. So they've partnered this year with the organization called Toasty Toes. I think they're Stittsville based, or at least west end of Ottawa based, collecting socks for vulnerable individuals in our community. So that's good. And a super fun event. It's free. It's a Village Square Park on November 1st in the evening.
Well, that's great. That's I think that's a good way to end it then.
Okay.
Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I don't know. I should look. I don't know why I'm looking at my book, because it's not like I have notes. I just have random things from the past few days.
And if there are any bonus questions, anyone wants to add another question to the chat, feel free.
I know. Okay, a couple things. There is now an advanced green on Hazeldean turning onto Carp, not only in the morning rush hour, which we've had for a while, but in the daytime and afternoon rush hour as well. So one of those minor things, I'm a person who gets excited about changes to traffic signals, but that's good. The other one is Abbott Street at Terry Fox. The timing on that light has changed, because if you were turning off of Abbott Street onto Terry Fox, sometimes a day it was taking many, many light cycles. But also staff have added a camera there, a live camera, so that in the control room on Loretta Avenue downtown, if they start to see a backup on Terry Fox or on Abbott Street, they can manually adjust the signals to help traffic move a little sooner.
Cool.
Yeah. It's an incredible facility. They might do it this year. If we have a Doors Open Ottawa, usually they open up the traffic monitoring facility to the public, and it's like this massive control room, and they can access cameras at intersections all over the city, and they can control every single traffic light from a computer interface. It's
That's
very
like Loretta and Gladstone area.
Yeah, kind of near Preston Street area.
Okay.
The Extendicare long-term care home. There's a groundbreaking for that on Friday afternoon. That's between Wellings and the Keg. So that's happening soon. Looking at my calendar here, Coco Mutts, their grand reopening. They've moved their shop to next to Brown's in the plaza with the Tim Hortons and the Subway and the Mahogany Spa and everything. So Coco Mutts is opening up in there. That's on Saturday. We're doing our trick or treat giveaway on Sunday. We're doing the pumpkin parade on Monday. I have Board of Health that night though, so I might miss the pumpkin parade for Board of Health. That's not good. Board of Health meetings tend to be very long. So city committees and so on. What's this? Meet and greet. Oh, I'm meeting the new head of transit next week as well. That's Renee Amilcar. She's replacing John Manconi. She's from Montreal, worked at the transit system there. So there's a highlight for next Friday. Anyways, lots going on. Any other questions coming in before we wrap for the evening?
There have been no other questions that have come in, and I none coming in at the buzzer now either.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep prepping for tomorrow's council. We're finalizing the official plan, and there's about a dozen motions that we're considering. So I'll be reading up on that and preparing my closing comments there for tomorrow. So
It'll be a big day.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan, for your help tonight. And
my pleasure as always.
thank you to all of our residents who tuned in on Zoom or on Facebook and shared your questions. It's good to do these. And we'll do it again, probably what, about a month, end of November, let's say?
Yeah, end of November, and we'll try and get maybe one in before the break as well.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Good night, see you.